Good evening. Boa noite. Dobry wieczór. That was in Polish. Proszę bardzo. Today, it's an honor to be here with you. Yesterday, Portugal celebrated one of the most important days in Portugal's history, the Freedom Day, 25th of April. In this very same day, 40 years ago, 20 minutes past noon, sharp, the music Grândola Vila Morena played in radios all over Portugal. This music was an encoded message, a signal to the people to rise against the authoritarian dictatorship of the new state. In an impressive feature of courage and coordination, strategic points were taken. The revolution was achieved, and no shot was fired. In that day, Portugal has shown to the world that freedom can be achieved, and you don't need to use violence to do so. So thank you for being here. But today, we are going to talk about dance. Dance, as any form of art, has the power to express feelings and ideas. It does so using the movements and positions of the body. Communication is so impregnated in dance that it's even hard to find an example where you don't see the communication process be embedded into it. Many kinds of dances have different goals, different contexts. Some of them, the goal is to communicate an idea, a story. In the case of ballet, you're telling a narrative. In the case of the rainmaking dance, you're sending a request to nature or gods. In other kinds of dance, communication gets even deeper. In this kind of dance, like pair dances, for the tango, for instance, you have to communicate in order to dance. You have to tell your partner your intent, where you want to go. And he or she has to understand you, understand your intent in clear form, so you can together compose the dance. So, communication happens in dance, and our question would be, how? And to do that, we have to understand what communication is. But communication is a very complex phenomenon. It involves many different people, involves levels and processes. So when in science we face a very complex problem, what we do is to we try to find first a simplified case, and if it's still very complicated, we try to break it down in parts. So we can look at each part and build some understanding from it. And once we understand many of these parts, we look at this knowledge and try to get some insight about the whole process. This will be my approach. You saw in the first event, we did that with dance. We're going to do that with communication, and let's see what we can learn from it. So let's get a very simplified case where communication would be just a transfer of information. Okay? So to transfer information, you just need first information information itself. Then you would need a source and a destination. The information has to travel from one to the other through a mean. And to go through this mean, you have to encode it so it can be transferred. This is, of course, you have to assume that both sides can understand the code. This is very easy to understand when we are talking about language, like the verbal language that you use every day, the Portuguese, the English, any other verbal language. For instance, if I have information about the world, like the cup of coffee is hot, right? I see with my senses, I feel with my touch. I want to convey this information to you. What I do is to transform that information into a sentence. The cup is hot, and send it to you. You, in your part, you have to receive it, and if you understand English, you can use that information to prevent yourself from getting burned. This is the very standard model for communication. In science, models help us to understand things. They are tools for the thinking, for your mind. We are going to use this during this introductory presentation so we can go through the concepts more easily, okay? So, I was telling that in English we can transfer information very clearly. What about non-verbally? It seems that the behavior is, you would wonder, how can you transfer information as clear as you would without words? Happens that this little animal, the honeybee, they can tell the others about information about the world. The way they do this is through a dance, or at least through what we call a dance, the waggle dance. For a foraging bee can find a source of food, whatever, and come back and perform this dance, and depending on the angle of the central part and the length that the length of time that's spending doing that, they can tell all the information that the other bees need to know to find that source of food. They can tell basically direction and distance. But what about with us humans? How do we communicate without words? For us, it's very complicated. We communicate in many levels. We use gestures, we use eyes. The element that's most well understood or most well researched is our facial expressions. Since Darwin, we know that we share some physiological responses with other animals when we express emotions. For instance, the group of muscles that we contract in our faces. This means that for any given emotion, we would have some sort of code to convert in muscular contraction of our face. Would be equivalent to this, to the encoding process. But this doesn't mean much if we cannot understand it. If we cannot, even if we express those emotions through the face, if we do not recognize them, there is no communication. Paul Ekman, American psychologist, made a very deep study on the facial expression. He cataloged about 10,000 facial expressions and exposed them to people from different cultural backgrounds. And tried to see if these people could classify those facial expressions in the same emotional content category. He found out that, surprisingly, yes, we can classify in 6 general emotional contents. Would you be able to tell, for instance, what's happy here? What?
The one in the middle.
Okay. What about disgust?
Sorry?
Disgust. If you... No? Well, you can see by yourself now. Did you get it right or not? Yes? Okay. Well, this suggests, at least this study suggests that we are able to perceive emotional expression through the musculature of our faces. This would be equivalent to decode this process, to decode this message. Well, we have encoding, we have decoding. But it's not enough to know that we can do that. We want to know the code, right? It's part of our curiosity to know how can we extract information from that. So there is a research made in 1996 from Giacomo Rizzotti. You probably heard about it, mirror neurons. The press has told a lot of things about it, that it's the basic for the neurons responsible for empathy, for comprehending actions, for learning through imitation. Well, it happens that his research doesn't tell nothing of that. What his research actually tells is that you have a neuron that is active from when you do an action, and the same neuron is active when you see the same action being performed by somebody else. And not to understand what's going on, imagine like this. Imagine that these are the neurons, these circles are the neurons in the head of the monkey, in the brain of the monkey. And you give a little ball for him to manipulate it. And when he does that, some of the neurons get activated, the yellow ones. If you take the ball and you do the same movement, a subset of these neurons will respond to this stimulation. What is interesting about that is, or the claim that some people do about this, is that because the same neuron that you use to create an action is also active when it observes an action, some people interpret that as that in order for you to understand an action from somebody else, you have to simulate that inside your own brain. This claim is not confirmed yet, but would be really excited if it is. So I think that's nothing best than going directly to the source. So we are putting the link to this paper available in the website, so you can go there and check by yourself and learn from it. because Giacomo Risotti is coming to visit us and give a seminar in 30th of July. So, I hope that I could inform you about the use of a very simple toy model that can help you to understand how we convert information in our lives into a message that can be used to another peer. And I hope also to show you that, be able to show you that you can actually map each one of these elements to what happens in dance. When you get your feelings, you can transform them into movements and facial expressions and gestures. And this would be captured by the audience or the dance partner. And maybe, I don't know, through some kind of simulation, we could incorporate them and understand it. So, I hope you enjoyed. I have to introduce you to Professor Nikki Clayton and Mr. Clive Wilkins. They are here to share the insights on how we keep conversation without words and how that can lead us to new ways of thinking. With you, Nikki and Clive.